Austin's sweet, but being with him is like teaching a puppy compared to Brandon. That is what my girlfriend Mackenzie told her roommate at 2 a.m. while she thought I was passed out drunk on their couch. So I lay there motionless for another hour listening to her destroy every bit of confidence I had. Then broke up with her the next morning without ever telling her why. I am Austin, 28. Mechanical engineer working for a manufacturing company in Ohio. This happened during my junior year of college, but I am finally ready to tell this story because of how perfectly everything worked out in the end. I was 20 when I started dating Mackenzie, 19F, a psychology major who was everything I thought I wanted. She was beautiful, popular, outgoing, and for some reason wanted to be with me. I was the typical engineering student, quiet, focused on my studies. Not exactly smooth with relationships. We had been together 6 months by spring semester, and I thought everything was going great. She would spend most nights at my apartment. We had studied together, go to parties on weekends. I genuinely believed we were building something real. Sure, I was inexperienced compared to her previous relationships, but I figured that would improve with time and communication. The problem was Mackenzie's ex-boyfriend Brandon. He was everything. I wasn't star quarterback, fraternity president, the kind of guy who commanded attention when he walked into a room. They had dated for 2 years before she met me, and everyone on campus knew about their relationship. It was one of those legendary college couples that everyone either loved or envied. Brandon had graduated the semester before I started dating Mackenzie, but his presence still loomed large. Mackenzie would occasionally mention him in conversation, usually about some memory or inside joke. She still had photos with him on her Instagram from before we started dating. When people talked about campus relationships, Brandon and Mackenzie were always mentioned as the standard. I tried not to let it bother me, but I would be lying if I said I didn't feel insecure sometimes. How do you follow up a campus legend? How do you measure up to someone who seemed perfect in every way that mattered to a 19-year-old girl? Mackenzie always reassured me when I brought up these concerns. That is all in the past, she would say. I am with you now because I want to be with you. She seemed genuine when she said it, so I chose to believe her and focused on being the best boyfriend I could be. The night everything changed was a typical Saturday in March. There was a huge party at the Sigma Chi house, and Mackenzie had been excited about it all week. Some of her old friends were coming back to visit, and she wanted to show me off to people she hadn't seen in months. We started drinking early. I am not usually a heavy drinker. A few beers, and I am good for the night. But Mackenzie was in a party mood, and she kept bringing me shots, laughing and hanging all over me, telling everyone what a great boyfriend I was. This is Austin, she would announce to her friends. Isn't he the sweetest? He brings me coffee every morning before my 8 a.m. class. I felt like I was finally fitting into her social world. For once, I didn't feel like the awkward engineering guy who somehow landed the popular girl. Mackenzie was being more affectionate than usual, holding my hand, kissing me randomly, making sure everyone knew we were together. By midnight, I was way drunker than I had intended to be. Mackenzie wasn't much better when she suggested we head back to her dorm. I could barely walk straight. Her roommate Jade had left the party earlier, so Mackenzie figured we would have some privacy. We stumbled back to her dorm around 2 a.m. I was spinning badly. That kind of drunk where you know you need to lie down immediately or you are going to throw up. Mackenzie's room had a small couch, and I collapsed onto it while she went to get water from the hallway fountain. The room was dark, and I closed my eyes trying to stop the spinning. I could hear Mackenzie in the hallway talking to someone, probably saying goodnight to other people coming back from parties. When she came back into the room, I heard her close the door and assumed she was going to bed. I was too drunk and dizzy to move, so I just lay there with my eyes closed, trying not to throw up. That is when I heard Jade's voice. How was the party? You guys seemed pretty wasted when you came in. Oh my God, it was so much fun, Mackenzie said, and I could hear her moving around the room, probably changing clothes. Austin was actually being social for once. Usually he is so shy at parties, but tonight, he was talking to everyone. That is good. You guys seem really happy together. There was a pause, and then Mackenzie's voice changed. It got softer, more confessional. The way people talk when they think they are having a private conversation. I mean, He is really sweet. He tries so hard to make me happy, but, Jade prompted. Another pause. Then Mackenzie sighed. God, I miss Brandon so much sometimes. Austin's a good guy, but it is just different. My stomach dropped, but I forced myself to stay still. They thought I was passed out drunk, and I wanted to hear where this conversation was going. Different? How? Jade asked. Brandon he knew exactly what he was doing, in every way. Austin tries. But it is like, I don't know how to explain it without being mean. Mackenzie, I am just being honest. With Brandon, everything was natural and confident and amazing. With Austin, it is like teaching a puppy. He is eager and sweet, but he has no idea what he is doing. The words hit me like a physical blow. I lay there trying not to react, trying to keep my breathing steady, while my heart hammered against my chest. That is pretty harsh, Jade said quietly. I know, but it is true. Brandon was, God. Brandon was incredible. Austin's adequate, I guess, but it is just not the same. Sometimes I lie there afterward and think about how good Brandon was at everything. Mackenzie, that is really not fair to Austin. I know. I feel bad about it sometimes. Austin's such a good person, and he loves me so much, but I cannot help comparing them. Brandon was just more of a man, I wanted to get up and walk out, but I was paralyzed. Part of it was the alcohol, but mostly it was the complete humiliation of what I was hearing. So why are you with Austin if you feel that way? Jade asked. Because Brandon doesn't want me back, Mackenzie said, and her voice got sad. I tried to get back together with him over Christmas break, but he said he had moved on, said we were just a college thing and it was time to grow up. And Austin worships me. He thinks I am perfect. It is nice to feel appreciated, even if, she trailed off. Even if what? Even if I know I will never feel about him the way I felt about Brandon. Austin's like a safe choice. He will never hurt me or leave me because he knows he got lucky. Those words burned into my memory. I will never forget exactly how she said it. Matter of fact, like she was discussing what to have for lunch. I lay there for what felt like hours while they talked about other things. Eventually, Jade went to bed and Mackenzie climbed into her bed. I could hear her settling in, probably assuming I would sleep on the couch, and we would have breakfast together in the morning, like we usually did after parties. But I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying every word she had said. Teaching a puppy. Safe choice. Never feel about him the way I felt about Brandon. Around 6 a.m., when the alcohol had mostly worn off, and I could think clearly, I quietly got up and left. Mackenzie was still sleeping. I walked back to my apartment in the early morning light, trying to process what I had heard and figure out what to do next. I couldn't pretend I had never heard that conversation. I couldn't look Mackenzie in the face knowing what she really thought about me, and I definitely couldn't stay in a relationship where I was just a consolation prize for someone who was still in love with her ex. At 10 a.m., I sent her a text. I think we should break up. My phone started ringing immediately. When I didn't answer, the texts started coming. What? Austin, what are you talking about? Did something happen last night? Why will not you answer your phone? Please call me back. I don't understand what is happening. I turned off my phone and tried to figure out how to move forward. The hardest part was that Mackenzie genuinely had no idea why I was ending things. In her mind, we had had a great night at the party and I would randomly decided to break up with her the next morning. But I couldn't bring myself to tell her what I had heard. The humiliation was too complete, too devastating. How do you tell someone that you accidentally discovered they think you are pathetic in bed and that they are settling for you because their real choice doesn't want them? 3 days later, Mackenzie showed up at my apartment demanding answers. Update 1, sorry for the delayed update. Had to finish a major project at work and needed some time to think about how much detail to share. The response to my original post has been overwhelming. A lot of you are asking what happened when Mackenzie confronted me and whether I ever told her the truth. Here is how it all went down. 3 days after I sent the breakup text, Mackenzie showed up at my apartment around 8 p.m. I could hear her knocking and calling my name through the door. Austin, I know you are in there. Your car is in the parking lot. We need to talk about this. I didn't want to face her, but she wasn't going away. "What the hell is going on?" she said, pushing past me into the apartment. She was right. Normally, I would have explained everything. Probably apologized for hurting her feelings. Maybe even let her talk me out of the breakup. But I couldn't get her words out of my head. Teaching a puppy. Safe choice. Never feel about him the way I felt about Brandon. "I just think we want different things," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "That is bullshit, and you know it. We were happy together. You were happy. What changed between Saturday night and Sunday morning?" Nothing changed. I just realized some things. Mackenzie stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "Realized what things, Austin? You are scaring me. This isn't like you." And she was right. It wasn't like me. The old Austin would have crumbled under her tears. Would have taken her back immediately. Would have pretended everything was fine. But the old Austin hadn't heard his girlfriend compare him to a puppy while talking about how much she missed her ex. "I realized we are not compatible long term," I said. "We want different things." "Since when?" "Last week you were talking about summer plans. You said you wanted to meet my parents over spring break." I had said that. I had been planning a future with her while she was lying there after we were intimate, thinking about how much better Brandon had been. "People change their minds," I said. Mackenzie started crying. "Is there someone else? Did you meet someone?" There is no one else." "Then why are you doing this to us?" I almost broke down and told her everything right then. She looked genuinely devastated. Like she couldn't understand how her world had suddenly fallen apart. But then I remembered her voice in the dark room. "Austin's adequate, I guess. But it is just not the same. I am sorry, Mackenzie. I know this hurts. But it is for the best." She tried everything. Tears, anger, bargaining, promises to change things she didn't even know were broken. She stayed for 2 hours, begging me to explain what had gone wrong, what she could do to fix it. The hardest part was that I could see she genuinely cared about me. Maybe not the way she had cared about Brandon, but she did care. In her mind, she was losing something good for no reason. But caring about someone and being in love with them are two different things, and I couldn't spend the rest of college being someone's safe choice while they fantasized about their ex. When she finally left that night, she was angry and confused. "Fine, but don't expect me to wait around when you change your mind." The next few weeks were rough. Mackenzie and I had a lot of mutual friends, and she told everyone I would randomly lost my mind and broken up with her without explanation. Since I couldn't tell people the real reason, I looked like the bad guy in the situation. So friend Ryan kept asking what had really happened. "Dude, you were crazy about her," he said one night when we were grabbing dinner. "I have never seen you happier than you were with Mackenzie. Now you look like someone killed your dog. What aren't you telling me?" I held out for weeks, but eventually I broke down and told Ryan everything. The party, the conversation, the humiliation of lying there listening to my girlfriend describe our relationship as teaching a puppy. Ryan was quiet for a long time after I finished the story. "Damn," he finally said. "That is brutal, man." "Yeah, but you know what? You dodged a nuclear bomb." I looked at him skeptically. "How do you figure?" "Think about it. You found out who she really was before you wasted years on her. Imagine if you had dated through college, maybe gotten engaged, and then found out she had been settling for you the whole time. Imagine if you had married someone who thought you were adequate compared to their ex." He was right, but it still hurt like hell. "Plus," Ryan continued, "anyone who would talk about their boyfriend like that while he is sleeping in the same room isn't someone you want to build a life with. That is not just about physical stuff. That is about respect and loyalty and basic human decency." Over the next month, I started seeing Ryan's point. The more distance I got from the relationship, the more I realized that Mackenzie had shown me exactly who she was in that moment. Someone who would tell her roommate intimate details about our relationship. Someone who was still in love with her ex but settling for me as a backup plan. Someone who thought I was lucky to be with her instead of recognizing that relationships should be partnerships between equals. But the best part of this story was still to come. About 2 months after the breakup, I was at the library studying for finals when a girl from my thermodynamics class came over to ask about the homework. Her name was Sarah, and she was a nursing student who was taking engineering classes as electives. Austin, right? You explained that heat transfer problem really well in class yesterday. Could you help me understand the methodology for problem set 7? Sarah was pretty, but in a completely different way than Mackenzie. Where Mackenzie was flashy and attention-grabbing, Sarah was warm and genuine. She had this smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. We ended up studying together for 3 hours. When the library closed, we went to get coffee and talked until 2 a.m. about everything except thermodynamics. Our families, our goals, our favorite movies, our worst dating experiences, though I kept the Mackenzie details vague. I just got out of a relationship a couple months ago. I mentioned when she asked why I was single. Bad breakup, she asked. Something like that. Turned out we weren't as compatible as I thought. Well, her loss, Sarah said with that amazing smile. You seem like one of the good ones. When we finally said goodnight, I realized I hadn't thought about Mackenzie once during our entire conversation. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely happy. Sarah and I started studying together regularly, then hanging out, then dating. The difference between her and Mackenzie was like night and day. Where Mackenzie made me feel like I was trying to prove I was worthy of her attention, Sarah made me feel valued and appreciated just for being myself. 3 weeks into dating Sarah, we were at her apartment watching movies when she asked about my previous relationship. You mentioned a bad breakup? Want to talk about it? I gave her the basic story. Dated a girl for 6 months. Found out we wanted different things. Ended it amicably, but it still hurt. What kind of different things? Sarah asked. I thought about how to explain it without going into the devastating details. I guess I found out she was comparing me to her ex-boyfriend. Made me realize I was probably a rebound relationship that went on too long. Sarah frowned. That is awful. How did you find out? Overheard a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. I am sorry. That must have been really painful. It was. But honestly, it was probably for the best. Better to find out sooner than later. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she took my hand. For what it is worth, I think anyone who would compare their current boyfriend to their ex doesn't deserve either of them. When you care about someone, they become the standard, not a comparison to someone else. That is when I knew Sarah was different, not just from Mackenzie, but from anyone I would ever met. But the story gets even better because karma was just getting started with Mackenzie. Update 2: Wi-Fi finally got fixed after being out since Friday. Storm knocked out half the neighborhood. Time to finish this story, especially since some of you have been DMing me asking for the conclusion. So Sarah and I kept dating through the rest of junior year and into senior year. The more time I spent with her, the more I realized how unhealthy my relationship with Mackenzie had actually been. Sarah never made me feel inadequate or like I was competing with anyone from her past. She appreciated effort, communicated openly, and treated our relationship like we were building something together, instead of me trying to prove I was worthy of her time. The physical side of our relationship was completely different too. Where Mackenzie had made me feel clumsy and inexperienced, Sarah made me feel confident and wanted. She never compared me to anyone or made me feel like I was failing some invisible test, you know? Sarah told me one night about 8 months into our relationship, "Whoever convinced you that you weren't good at relationships was lying to you. You are incredible." Sarah could tell I had been damaged by my previous relationship, though I had never shared the specific details. Meanwhile, campus gossip kept me updated on Mackenzie's situation. After our breakup, she had been struggling to move forward, trying unsuccessfully to reconnect with Brandon, but he would clearly moved on and wasn't interested in revisiting their college relationship. She has had a hard time dating anyone else, Ryan mentioned once. People say she talks about her ex constantly. During senior year, Sarah and I ran into Mackenzie at a party. It was the first time I had seen her since she had confronted me at my apartment. "Austin," she said, clearly drunk. "To Sarah, my girlfriend," I said. Mackenzie's smile flickered. "Girlfriend. Well, that is great," Mackenzie said. But her voice had an edge. "Austin's a really sweet guy. I am sure you two are very happy together." The word sweet hit me like a flashback to that dorm room. But standing there with Sarah, it didn't hurt anymore. Mackenzie's opinion of me no longer mattered. After we walked away, Sarah asked, "That was the ex, wasn't it? How could you tell?" "The way she looked at you," like she was trying to figure out what she was missing. Fast forward to graduation, the week before. Ryan shared Mackenzie updates. Jake Morrison dated her briefly this semester, he said. Apparently, she spent the whole time talking about Brandon. Word got around campus that she cannot move on. Her reputation went from popular girl to that girl obsessed with her ex. Meanwhile, Sarah and I were building our future. After graduation, we moved to Ohio together. She started nursing school while I began my engineering career. We got an apartment, adopted a dog, started talking about marriage. 3 years later, I proposed on the anniversary of our first study session. She said yes immediately. I love how we built this together, she told me. I love that when I am with you, you are the only person I think about. We got married the following year. At our reception, Ryan mentioned that Mackenzie had been through several failed relationships since college, always bringing up the past. That is sad, Sarah said. She genuinely felt sorry for someone stuck and unable to move forward. Now we are celebrating our second wedding anniversary, and Sarah's pregnant with our first child. We bought our first house last year. Sarah completed nursing school and works in pediatric care. And I got promoted to project manager. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't overheard that conversation in Mackenzie's dorm room? Sarah asked recently while we set up the baby's crib. I try not to dwell on it. But probably I would have wasted years with someone who was settling for me instead of finding someone who genuinely wants to build a life together. Well, I am glad you found out when you did, Sarah said. You deserve someone who thinks you are amazing exactly as you are. Looking back, that terrible night when I pretended to sleep while Mackenzie destroyed my confidence was actually the best thing that ever happened to me. It freed me to find something real instead of staying trapped in something false. Sometimes the worst conversations you overhear turn out to be exactly what you needed to hear. Final update. It has been 6 years since that night in Mackenzie's dorm room, and I wanted to share how everything turned out because the contrast is incredible. Sarah and I are approaching our 3rd wedding anniversary. We bought our first house last year in a great neighborhood, and Sarah gave birth to our daughter Emma 6 months ago. Being parents has been amazing, challenging, but rewarding. Sarah took time off from nursing, and I have been advancing in my engineering career. Our relationship continues growing stronger through all the normal adult challenges. When we disagree, we talk it through. We handle everything as a team. About 8 months ago, Sarah found Mackenzie's social media profile. Lots of inspirational quotes about finding love, professional photos that looked like dating app material, and throwback posts to college. She is still single, Sarah asked. Looks like it, I said, scrolling through posts, featuring old college party pictures, including several with Brandon. That is from like 5 years ago. She is still pretty focused on the past, Sarah observed. I feel sorry for her. The contrast was striking. While we were building our future and starting our family, Mackenzie appeared stuck reliving her college years. From what I had heard through mutual connections, Mackenzie had moved back to her hometown and was working some office job. Ryan mentioned she had had a few failed engagements because she couldn't move forward from the past. Meanwhile, I looked around our living room, Sarah feeding Emma, our dog by the fireplace, family photos on the mantle, normal happy domestic life built on mutual respect and shared goals. When I think about that night sometimes, lying on Mackenzie's couch, listening to her tell her roommate that being with me was like teaching a puppy compared to Brandon, I realize it was actually the best thing that could have happened. That conversation showed me Mackenzie's true character and saved me from wasting years on someone who saw me as a consolation prize. It taught me the difference between being with someone who appreciates you and being with someone who settles for you. Most importantly, it freed me to meet Sarah when I was ready to recognize something real. 6 years later, Mackenzie appears stuck posting throwback photos and struggling with relationships. Meanwhile, I am building a life with someone who chose me first, not as a backup plan. Sometimes the most painful truths you accidentally overhear are exactly what you need to hear. I wouldn't change anything about how it all worked out.